My name's Rachel, and boy, do I have a story to tell you. It all started after I graduated college and landed a job as a flight attendant. Fresh-faced and eager, I was ready to take on the world, one flight at a time. It was on one of those routine flights that I met him, Jack. Tall, handsome, with a smile that could light up the cockpit. Yeah, you guessed it, he was the pilot. Our eyes met as I was doing the pre-flight checks, and I swear, it was like something out of a cheesy romance movie. From that moment on, Jack and I were inseparable. We'd grab coffee during layovers, swap stories about passengers, and before I knew it, we were dating. It was a whirlwind romance, the kind you read about in books or see in movies. We were young, in love, and the sky was literally the limit. 6 months after we met, Jack proposed. It wasn't anything fancy, just us, on the beach, during a stopover in Hawaii. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jack got down on one knee, sand sticking to his uniform pants, and pulled out a ring. We got married in a small ceremony a few months later. Life was perfect, or so I thought. It was about a year into our marriage. I was working a long-haul flight from New York to Tokyo. Everything was going smoothly until we hit some turbulence over the Pacific. I was in the middle of the cabin, making sure everyone was secure. That's when it happened. The plane suddenly dropped, like the bottom had fallen out of the sky. I was thrown off my feet, my body slamming into the overhead compartments before I hit the floor. Pain, blinding, white-hot pain shot through my back. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. Panic set in as I realized something was seriously wrong. The rest of the flight was a blur. Emergency landing in Anchorage, being rushed to the hospital, doctors poking and prodding. The diagnosis came like a punch to the gut, severe spinal injury. Just like that, my life in the sky was over. The airline was good about it, I'll give them that. They paid for my medical bills, offered me a hefty compensation. Jack was my rock through it all. He'd sit by my hospital bed, hold my hand as I went through physical therapy. "We'll get through this, Ratch," he'd say. "Together." And we did. Slowly but surely, I learned to walk again. But flying? That was off the table. The doctors were clear, any more stress on my spine could lead to permanent damage. So, I had to reinvent myself. The airline offered me a position in their ground staff, and I took it. It wasn't the same as being up in the air, but it was something. With the compensation money, Jack and I decided to buy a house. A beautiful, spacious place in a nice neighborhood. It was more than we needed, really, but Jack insisted. "You deserve this, Rachel," he said. "After everything you've been through." As Jack and I settled into our new house, I thought we were finally getting our happily ever after. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and mine came in the form of my sister-in-law, Sarah. From the moment I met her, I could tell Sarah didn't like me. She was Jack's younger sister, married with a 4-year-old son, but there was always this edge to her. Like she was constantly sizing me up, looking for flaws. I remember the first time she visited our new house. Her eyes darted around, taking in every detail. "Well, isn't this nice?" she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You certainly landed on your feet after that accident, didn't you, Rachel? Some people have all the luck, I guess. Even when they fall, they land in a pile of money." I bit my tongue, not wanting to start a fight. Jack had always been close to his sister, despite her difficult personality. I didn't want to be the one to come between them. Over the next few months, Sarah's visits became more frequent, and her comments more biting. Every time she came over, it was like walking on eggshells. I tried to be the bigger person, to ignore her jabs and passive-aggressive remarks. But it was wearing me down. One day, after a particularly nasty comment about how I was milking my injury, I confronted Jack about it. "I can't take it anymore," I said, tears of frustration in my eyes. "Your sister hates me, and I don't know why." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She's just Sarah. She's always been jealous of others. It's not you, it's her. I'll talk to her, okay? She needs to back off. But talking to Sarah didn't seem to help. If anything, it made her more resentful. She'd make a show of being polite when Jack was around, but the moment he was out of earshot, the claws would come out. It all came to a head about a year after we moved in. Sarah showed up unannounced one afternoon, all smiles and sweetness. I was immediately on guard. "Rachel, darling," she cooed, and I had to resist the urge to check for flying pigs. "I have a huge favor to ask." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "Well, you see, Tommy's 5th birthday is coming up," she said, referring to her son. "And I was wondering, could we possibly have his party here?" I must have looked shocked, because she quickly added, "It's just, your house is so beautiful, and I have some important business contacts I want to impress. It would mean so much to me." I hesitated. On one hand, this was Sarah, the woman who'd made my life miserable for the past year. On the other, maybe this was an olive branch? A chance to finally build a better relationship? Against my better judgment, I found myself nodding. In the weeks leading up to Tommy's birthday, I threw myself into party planning with gusto. I spent hours scouring the internet for party ideas, saving Pinterest boards, and watching YouTube tutorials. I wanted everything to be perfect, from the decorations to the food, right down to the party favors. The day before the party, I was a whirlwind of activity. I'd ordered beautiful decorations, balloons in Tommy's favorite colors, a custom banner, and even hired a face painter. The snacks were all prepared, a mix of kid-friendly treats and some fancier hors d'oeuvres for the adults. I'd even baked the cake myself, a 3-tiered masterpiece covered in fondant and decorated with little rocket ships. Tommy was going through a space phase. As I was putting the finishing touches on the living room decorations, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Everything ready for tomorrow? Remember, first impressions are everything." I rolled my eyes, but texted back a cheerful, "All set. It's going to be great." When morning finally came, I was up at the crack of dawn, double and triple checking everything. Jack had an early flight, so he kissed me goodbye and wished me luck before heading out. "You've got this," he said, giving me a reassuring smile. "And remember, it's just a kid's birthday party. Don't stress too much." I nodded, but inside, I knew it was more than just a party. It was my chance to finally prove myself to Sarah, to show her that I was a valuable part of this family. As the clock ticked closer to party time, I got dressed in my nicest outfit, a pretty floral dress that I hoped struck the right balance between casual and put together. I did my hair and makeup, wanting to look my best for Sarah's important business contacts. Just as I was giving the living room one final once-over, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt into my throat. This was it. Showtime. I opened the door with a bright smile, ready to welcome Sarah and Tommy. "Happy birthday, big guy," I said, kneeling down to Tommy's level. Sarah breezed past me, her eyes scanning the decorated living room. "Well, it looks adequate," she said, her tone making it clear that adequate was a stretch. I bit back a retort and instead held out the beautifully wrapped gift for Tommy. "Here you go, sweetie. I hope you like it." Sarah snatched the gift from my hands before Tommy could reach for it. "We'll open presents later," she said curtly. Then, her eyes locked onto mine, a strange glint in them. "Rachel, dear, I need you to go to the city park and take a nice long walk. Say, 2 or 3 hours?" I blinked, sure I had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" Sarah's smile tightened. "You heard me. I'll meet the guests myself. You're superfluous here." The words hit me like a slap. "Sarah, this is my home. I'm not going anywhere. I've spent weeks preparing for this party. I thought we could finally build a good relationship." Sarah's laughter cut through the air, sharp and mocking. "Oh, Rachel, you're so naive. I have no interest in being friends with you. None whatsoever." Before I could process what was happening, Sarah had grabbed my arm and was pushing me towards the door. I tried to resist, but she was surprisingly strong. Sarah, stop. What are you doing? With a final shove, I found myself stumbling out onto the front porch. The door slammed behind me, the sound echoing in the quiet neighborhood. I stood there, stunned, my mind struggling to catch up with what had just happened. I patted my pockets, realizing with growing horror that I had nothing but my phone. As if reading my thoughts, the door opened again. Sarah appeared, holding my purse and car keys. Here, she said, tossing them at my feet. Now get out of here. I don't want you embarrassing me in front of my friends. The door slammed shut again, leaving me alone in the driveway, staring at my own front door in disbelief. Numbly, I picked up my purse and keys and got into my car. My hands were shaking as I tried to figure out what to do. I dialed Jack's number, praying he'd pick up, but it went straight to voicemail. Of course, he was on a flight. In desperation, I called my mother-in-law. Surely she'd see reason. Linda, thank God, I said, my voice cracking. Sarah's thrown me out of my own house. She's having Tommy's party without me. You've got to help me. There was a pause, and then Linda's voice came back, cold and dismissive. Rachel, dear, I'm sure you're exaggerating. I'll be there soon to celebrate with my daughter and grandson. This is their day. Why don't you just stay out for a while? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Linda, please. But she had already hung up. Tears of frustration and hurt welled up in my eyes. I wanted to march back into that house and throw everyone out. But then I thought of Tommy, innocent in all this, and Jack, who would be devastated if I caused a scene with his family. With shaking hands, I scrolled through my contacts and called Sarah's husband, Mark. Rachel? Mark's voice was surprised. What's up? I took a deep breath and explained everything that had happened. Mark listened in stunned silence. I had no idea, he said when I finished. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I didn't even know Sarah was planning to have the party at your place. I'm stuck at work, but I'll be there in about 3 hours. Can you hang tight until then? I agreed, not knowing what else to do. Feeling lost and betrayed, I drove to a nearby cafe. As I sat there, nursing a coffee I couldn't taste, I tried to make sense of what had just happened. How had my attempt at building bridges turned into this nightmare? After what felt like an eternity, Mark's car pulled into the cafe parking lot. We drove up to my house in silence and walked in without knocking. The scene that greeted us was surreal. My living room was full of people I didn't recognize, all dressed to the nines. In the center of it all was Sarah, holding court like a queen at her coronation. Mark's voice cut through the chatter like a knife. What the hell is going on here? The room fell silent. Sarah's head whipped around, her face draining of color when she saw us. She tried to pull Mark aside, her voice low and urgent. Please, not in front of everyone. I can explain everything. But Mark wasn't having it. No, Sarah, I want answers now. Under the weight of Mark's glare and the curious stares of the guests, Sarah finally cracked. Fine, she hissed. I invited Jason and his parents, okay? She gestured to a smug-looking man in an expensive suit. They're very influential, and they promised to help me with my business venture. I couldn't pass up the opportunity. Mark's face reddened. So you used our son's birthday as a networking event? And what about my parents? Sarah's next words made my blood run cold. Your parents? Please. They're not exactly the kind of people who can help us get ahead. What was the point of inviting them? A tense silence fell over the room. Then, to my horror, Jason, Sarah's ex, raised his champagne glass in a mocking toast. No hard feelings, Mark, he said with a smirk. That was the last straw. Mark lunged at Jason, and suddenly my carefully planned party devolved into chaos. People were shouting, glasses were breaking, and in the middle of it all was Tommy, looking confused and scared. The party dissolved quickly after that. Guests hurried out, muttering apologies and avoiding eye contact. But Sarah wasn't done. Instead of apologizing to Mark or me, she cornered Jason and his parents, groveling and making excuses. "I'm so sorry about this," she simpered. "My husband doesn't understand how important networking is. I hope this hasn't ruined our chances of working together." As the last of the guests trickled out, I was left standing in my wrecked living room, surrounded by the ruins of the party I'd worked so hard to plan. Mark was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands, while Sarah continued to make excuses. Tommy had retreated to a corner, clutching the gift I'd given him earlier, looking lost and confused. When Jack finally returned from his trip, I broke down and told him everything. He pulled me into a tight hug, and for the first time since the party, I felt safe. "I promise you," he whispered, "I won't let her treat you like this ever again. You have my full support." True to his word, Jack called Sarah that very evening. I could hear his raised voice from the other room, words like disrespectful and inexcusable cutting through the air. When he hung up, he looked drained but resolute. "She won't be bothering us again anytime soon," he assured me. But the drama was far from over. Over the next few weeks, we heard through the family grapevine that Sarah and Mark's marriage was imploding. Apparently, Mark's suspicions about Sarah's relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Jason, had reached a boiling point. One evening, Mark called us, sounding desperate. "I found messages," he said, his voice cracking. "Hundreds of them, between Sarah and Jason. They'd been in constant contact before and after the party." My heart sank for Mark. "I'm so sorry," I said, not knowing what else to offer. "That's not all," Mark continued. "I did a paternity test on Tommy. I had to know." The situation was spiraling out of control. To make matters worse, Jack's parents seemed to have taken Sarah's side in all of this. One afternoon, I received a scathing call from Linda, my mother-in-law. "How dare you turn my children against each other," she screeched into the phone. "You've torn this family apart with your selfish behavior." I was stunned. "Linda, I didn't do anything." "Sarah." "Don't you dare blame Sarah," she interrupted. "She was just trying to better herself and her family. You're nothing but a self-centered homewrecker." Then came the day Mark received the paternity test results. He showed up at our doorstep, looking shell-shocked. "Tommy's mine," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's really mine." While this should have been a relief, it only seemed to complicate matters further. When Sarah found out about the test, she exploded. "How dare you question my fidelity," she shrieked at Mark during a confrontation we unfortunately witnessed. "Everything I've done has been for us, for our family." Mark scoffed. "Sneaking around with your ex is for our family?" "You don't understand," she yelled back. "Jason's mother has connections. I was trying to build a network, to create opportunities for us. But you," she pointed an accusing finger at Mark, "you're too much of a loser to see the bigger picture." The argument escalated, with Sarah hurling insults and accusations. And then, in a move that left us all stunned, Sarah stormed out. She returned an hour later with packed bags, Tommy clutching her hand. "I'm done," she announced coldly. "I'm going to build my empire, with or without you. You can keep your precious paternity test. I'll be back for Tommy when I'm successful." With that, she walked out, leaving a devastated Mark and a confused Tommy behind. Jack and I exchanged a look, silently agreeing that our lives had just become infinitely more complicated. We had chosen our side in this family war, and there was no going back now. The following months were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil. Jack and I found ourselves thrust into the role of impromptu babysitters, often looking after Tommy while Mark dealt with lawyers and court appearances. I couldn't help but feel a gnawing guilt. If I hadn't interrupted that party, would any of this have happened? One evening, as we were putting Tommy to bed after a long day of distracting him with games and stories, I confessed my feelings to Jack. "I can't help thinking this is all my fault," I whispered, fighting back tears. Jack pulled me close, his voice firm but gentle. "Rachel, listen to me. None of this is your fault. Sarah's always been like this, spoiled, selfish, unable to see or respect boundaries. You were just trying to be kind. She's the one who took advantage of that kindness. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of legal battles, the divorce was finalized. Mark was awarded full custody of Tommy, with Sarah granted limited visitation rights. It felt like we could all finally breathe again. Then, to our surprise and joy, I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't an easy pregnancy. My old spinal injury from the plane accident made things complicated. I had to wear a supportive corset constantly, and there were days when the pain was almost unbearable. But every time I felt the baby move, every time I saw the grainy image on the ultrasound screen, I knew it was worth it. Jack was over the moon, doting on me hand and foot. We thought we'd finally put the drama behind us. We were wrong. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. The doorbell rang, and Jack went to answer it. I heard his sharp intake of breath before I saw her. Sarah, standing on our doorstep, looking nothing like the polished, ambitious woman who'd stormed out of our lives years ago. I need to talk to Mark, she said, her voice hoarse. Please. Jack called Mark, who arrived within minutes, his face a mask of wary confusion. Sarah launched into her story as soon as he walked in. I've made a horrible mistake, she said, her eyes brimming with tears. The business, it all fell apart. Jason, he used me. When the project failed, he just left. I need help. They're demanding repayment. I thought maybe you could be a guarantor for a loan. The room fell silent. Tommy had stopped playing, watching the adults with wide, confused eyes. Mark took a deep breath. No, Sarah, he said finally. I won't be your guarantor, and I won't take you back. You made your choice years ago. Sarah's face crumpled. But what about Tommy? Don't you want him to have his mother back? Mark's voice was steel. Tommy has been just fine without you. We've moved on, Sarah. I think you should too. Just when we thought the dust had settled, Sarah made her grand reappearance. It was a crisp autumn morning, and I was enjoying a rare moment of peace, sipping herbal tea on the porch, my very pregnant belly making even this simple task a bit of a challenge. The sound of tires screeching broke the tranquility. Sarah burst out of her car, her face a mask of desperation and anger. Jack, she screamed, storming up our walkway. I need to talk to you. Jack appeared at the door, his face hardening at the sight of his sister. Sarah, you need to leave, now. But Sarah was beyond reason. She pointed an accusing finger at me. This is all her fault. If she hadn't come into our lives, none of this would have happened. I felt a familiar knot of guilt forming in my stomach, but Jack's firm voice cut through my doubts. That's enough, Sarah, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Rachel has done nothing but support this family, even when you tried to tear it apart. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. If you come here again, I'll call the police. For a moment, I thought Sarah might lunge at us. Instead, she spun on her heel and marched back to her car. As she peeled away, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The next morning, we woke to find Sarah had set up a tent on our front lawn. She'd fashioned a crude sign, "Family abandonment in progress, shame on you." This is ridiculous, Jack muttered, reaching for his phone. True to his word, he called the police. The officers were sympathetic but explained that as long as Sarah remained on public property, there wasn't much they could do. They did, however, issue her a warning about harassment. This standoff continued for days. Sarah would shout at us whenever we left the house, beg Jack to help her when he came home from work, and tried to guilt-trip me about stealing her family. Finally, after a week of this nightmare, we got a call from Linda. I've convinced Sarah to come home, she said, her voice tired. I'm sorry for everything. I see now that she needs help, not enabling. True to Linda's word, Sarah packed up her tent that evening. As she drove away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But the peace was short-lived. Jack found me in the nursery later that night, absently folding and refolding onesies. "Ratch," he said gently, "I've been thinking. Maybe we should sell the house. Move somewhere Sarah doesn't know about. Somewhere we can raise our baby in peace." The next few months were a whirlwind of real estate agents, packing boxes, and doctor's appointments. We found a smaller house in a quiet neighborhood across town, right next to a good school and a public library. It was perfect. Epilogue. It's been 5 years since we moved. Lily, our daughter, is a happy, healthy kindergartner, and Tommy, now a teenager, is a frequent visitor and doting cousin. Mark has found happiness with a kind woman who loves Tommy like her own. We hear from Linda occasionally. She tells us Sarah is working 2 jobs to pay off her debts and seems to be getting her life together. Part of me hopes that one day, she'll be ready to be a part of our lives again. But for now, we're content.
Hey everyone, I'm Henry. I missed you so much, Mom. I stood at her grave, placing fresh flowers like I did every month since cancer had taken her 3 years ago. At 25, I never imagined managing our family home alone, but at least my software engineering job at Tech Solutions kept me comfortable. "Henry, sweetheart, the kitchen sink is acting up again," called Aunt Sophia, her voice echoing through the hallway. Since she and Uncle James had moved in 6 months ago, supposedly because he lost his job, they had become a near constant presence. A few weeks, she promised. Now, weeks had turned into months. "I'm coming, Aunt Sophia," I sighed, heading to what felt less and less like my own kitchen. "Our Mia is so good with household stuff. You know," she added as I tightened the pipe. "She was just saying how lonely you must be in this big house." "I'm not lonely, Aunt Sophia," I replied, maybe with a bit more force than necessary. "Sarah and I are actually." "That girl." Sophia's tone sharpened. "Oh, honey, she's too career-focused. Not family-oriented like our Mia." My jaw clenched, and I twisted the wrench harder. Sarah had been my anchor since Mom died. We'd met at a tech conference 2 years ago, and she'd helped me through some of my darkest days. That evening, I was deep into my coding work when Mia accidentally stumbled into my office. "Oops," she giggled, wearing the shortest shorts I'd ever seen. "Didn't know you were here, Henry." I looked away, uncomfortable. "I'm working, Mia. Please close the door." "Don't be such a grump," she teased. "Mom says family should spend more time together." The next day, Sarah came over for dinner. I watched Aunt Sophia greet her with that smile, fake as ever. "So Sarah, still chasing that promotion?" "Must be hard to have time for anything else," she said, voice dripping with false concern. "Actually, I just got it," Sarah announced, her hand finding mine under the table. "Henry's been so supportive." "How nice," Sophia replied, eyes narrowing slightly. "Mia just graduated. She's planning to focus on being a homemaker. Isn't that right, sweetie?" Mia batted her eyelashes at me. "Family comes first, right, cousin?" Uncle James shifted uncomfortably but didn't say a word. He never did, always deferring to Sophia's decisions. That night, after Sarah left, I'd overheard Sophia's voice drifting from the kitchen. "James, that girl isn't right for him. Mia would make such a better wife. We just need to help Henry see that." "Sophia, maybe we should let him," James began. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Sophia snapped. "We're not losing this opportunity. This house is too perfect to let some outsider take over." I froze, my mother's last words echoing in my mind. "Take care of our home, Henry. It's your safe place." But right now, it felt anything but safe. At dinner the next evening, Aunt Sophia stood and clinked her glass. "Family, tonight is special. Mia has something to share." "Mom, please," Mia murmured, squirming with fake embarrassment. Our precious Mia has been in love with Henry for months, Sophia announced. Wouldn't they make the perfect couple? My fork clattered against the plate. What the hell are you talking about? Language, dear, Sophia chided. Mia has such deep feelings for you. You two growing closer is exactly what your mother would have wanted. No, absolutely not. I'm with Sarah. And Mia is my cousin. This is insane. Oh, about that. Sophia pulled a stack of papers from her bag. While organizing the mail, which I've been handling to help you, dear, I found these. My stomach dropped. Property tax notices, all overdue. You've been hiding my mail. That's illegal. I was protecting you, she insisted. Clearly, you're not ready to handle this house's responsibilities. But don't worry, I can help with the back taxes. If you make the right choice about your future. Are you blackmailing me? Think of it as family helping family. Break up with Sarah, marry Mia, and we'll take care of everything. I stood so fast my chair crashed backward. You're out of your mind. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, Sophia sneered. Who you think they'll believe? The neglectful young man who can't pay his taxes, or the caring aunt trying to save her nephew's inheritance. This is my house, I declared. My mother left it to me. A house you're about to lose, she replied coldly. Mia, honey, tell your cousin how you feel. Mia touched my arm. We could be so happy together. I recoiled. Don't touch me. This ends now. All of you. Out. No, dear nephew, Sophia said, her voice turning to ice. You get out. We're not going anywhere. You can't throw me out of my own house. Watch me. She held up a set of keys I'd never seen before. I had these made weeks ago. Uncle James wouldn't meet my eyes. Sorry, Henry. Sophia knows best. They were all crazy. I grabbed my laptop and phone, seething. This wasn't over. Choose carefully, Henry, Sophia called as I headed for the door. Family or that girl? You can't have both. I looked back, defiant. I already have family. Sarah's more family than any of you. The lock clicked behind me as I stepped out onto the porch, and my phone buzzed. Sarah calling. At least something in my life still made sense. Babe, I said, my voice heavy with everything I couldn't yet explain. Can I crash at your place? You won't believe what just happened. Through the window, I saw Uncle James slump in his chair, Sophia patting his shoulder with that smug, triumphant smile. Mia watched me leave, her eyes full of crocodile tears, as fake as everything else about her. The wind chimes Mom had loved tinkled in the breeze, almost like a reminder. I'll get our home back, Mom. I promise. I was in David Wong's office within the hour, sitting across from him at the same desk where Mom had signed her will 3 years ago. Sophie is trying to steal my house, I told him. David put down his pen and looked at me with calm intensity. Slow down, Henry. Start from the beginning. As I explained, David flipped through files, his brow furrowing. Suddenly, he stopped cold. Henry, did you sign these property documents? What documents? I frowned, leaning forward. I haven't signed anything. David's face darkened. Someone's been submitting paperwork to transfer the house deed. These signatures look similar to yours, but... He trailed off, and my blood began to boil. She's been forging my signature. Hold on. David rifled through more papers. These date back months. Transfer attempts, tax documents, even a power of attorney form. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Jennifer, my coworker. Henry, she said, sounding breathless, you won't believe what I found. I got into Sophia's laptop. I put her on speaker for David to hear. What's there, Jennifer? Emails. Tons of them, she replied. She planned this whole thing. Your uncle never even lost his job. She made him quit. She's wanted that house from the moment your mom passed. David's eyes widened, and I clenched my fists. There's more, Jennifer went on. She's done this before. 3 different companies reported fraud after she left. Faked expense reports, stole client information, the whole 9 yards. Just then, Sarah burst into the office, a folder in her hand. Henry, remember when you said Sophia worked for that accounting firm? I had my firm's financial crimes department look into it. She's been evading taxes for years, and not just for herself. She's helped clients hide money too. David, listen to this. Jennifer continued, reading from Sophia's emails. James, stop being a coward. Once we get the house, we'll flip it and split the profit. Henry's too naive to stop us. Mia knows what to do. My stomach twisted. Even Mia was in on it. Sarah's eyes were fierce as she held my hand. Wait. David pulled out another set of files, his expression turning grim. Henry, it's worse than you think. Sophia tried this before, with your mother's sister, Jenny. She tried to manipulate her out of her business, and Jenny ended up moving to Canada to escape. That's why Aunt Jenny cut off contact. I muttered, the pieces finally clicking. Sophia told me Jenny stole from Mom. Jennifer chimed back in. There are emails about other family members too. She's been running cons like this for years. David adjusted his glasses, resolute. Henry, we have enough here for criminal charges. Fraud, forgery, mail theft. Then let's show her how it's done. I stood up, determination hardening inside me. What's our next move? First, we document everything, David said. Then we wait. Sarah's eyes lit up. I just remembered something from law school. If we play this right, we can nail her on federal charges. I glanced at a photo of my mom hanging on David's wall. Sophia thought she could steal my mother's legacy. It was time to show her how wrong she was. David started making calls, while Jennifer kept digging through emails, and Sarah jotted down notes with that fierce, focused look I loved. You messed with the wrong family, Aunt Sophia, I muttered. The wrong family entirely. Days later, Sarah, David, and I watched from across the street as IRS agents marched into Sophia's office. Our anonymous tip had started an avalanche, and now there was no going back. Mrs. Chen, one of the agents announced, we need you to come with us. The lead agent's voice echoed across the office. There must be some mistake, Sophia stammered, her face going pale. No mistake, the agent replied, holding up a thick folder. We have evidence of systematic tax evasion spanning 8 years. Right on cue, Sophia's former boss burst through the door, red-faced. Sophia, the audit revealed everything. The missing client funds, the fake accounts. You can't prove anything, she snapped. Actually, we can. The agent's tone was resolute. Your nephew provided quite the paper trail. 2 weeks later, I stood by the window of my home, finally restored to me, watching as Sophia was escorted out in handcuffs. 7 counts of fraud, 3 of forgery, and 1 very angry IRS. Mia ran up the driveway, desperation in her eyes. Henry, you have to help Mom. Like she helped forge your college transcripts. I held up a letter from the university's investigation board. They know everything, Mia, including how Sophia helped you cheat your way through school. Her face crumbled. But we're family. No, I said firmly. Not anymore. Uncle James arrived later that afternoon, looking years older. Henry, he began, his voice heavy with regret. I'm so sorry. I had no idea about the debt she hid or the lies she told. I've filed for divorce. Good for you, Uncle James, I replied, my voice gentler than I expected. Maybe you'll find your backbone in the process. Just then, my phone buzzed. A promotion notification. Senior software architect. On the same day, Sarah came home with her own news. she'd made partner at her firm. "Babe," I said, taking her hands, "will you marry me?" I dropped to one knee in our backyard, the wind chimes Mom loved singing softly above us. Sarah's eyes sparkled with happy tears. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. A week later, a letter arrived from the county jail. I recognized Sophia's handwriting. "Dear Henry, I'm so sorry for everything. Can we please talk? Family should forgive." I dropped the letter into the shredder without reading further. The local newspaper summed it up. Local woman sentenced to 15 years for massive fraud scheme. Below that, a smaller headline read, "University expels student in transcript scandal." Sarah hugged me from behind, her warmth grounding me. "Your mom would be proud, you know." Looking around, I felt a profound sense of peace. The garden Mom loved so much was blooming again, vibrant and full of life. My coding setup hummed in the study, and Sarah's law books shared space with my engineering journals. This house was truly ours once more. Sophia had traded her designer wardrobe for prison orange, and Mia's future had evaporated along with her fake degree. They'd wanted my mother's house, but instead, they got 8 by 10 cells. I turned to Sarah, grinning. "Hey babe, what would you do if a family member tried to manipulate and blackmail you into marrying someone you didn't love? Would you expose them and cut ties completely, like I did, or try to keep the peace at your own expense?" She teased. "I think I'd do exactly what you did. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below."
Hey there, I'm Margaret, a 19-year-old girl from Ohio. Art's my thing. It's what keeps me going when everything else feels like it's falling apart. Margaret, how many times do I have to tell you to clean up this mess? My mom's sharp voice pierces through my bedroom door. "Coming, Mom." I yell back, sighing as I head downstairs. Passing the hallway mirror, I catch a glimpse of myself, long brown hair in a messy bun, paint splatters across my oversized t-shirt. Mom is waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed with a look of exasperation. "Look at you," she scoffs. "How do you expect to find a decent job looking like that? You need to start thinking about your future, Margaret." I bite my tongue, fighting back tears. I am thinking about my future, Mom. I want to go to art school in London. She laughs, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "Art school in London? Don't be ridiculous. You need a real career, not some pipe dream." Later, I'm in Mr. Thompson's art class, the one place I feel truly at home. "These are outstanding, Margaret," he says, flipping through my portfolio. "Have you thought about applying to art schools?" I nod. "I want to go to London, but my mom." He cuts me off. "Don't let anyone dim your light, Margaret. You have real talent." After class, I meet up with my best friend Amelia at our favorite cafe. "So how'd it go with Mr. T?" she asks. "He loved my work," I say with a grin, but then sigh. "You know my mom, she'd freak if she knew I was even thinking about it." Amelia rolls her eyes. "Your mom needs to chill. You deserve to follow your dreams." That night, I'm sketching in my room when I hear a knock. It's Dad's birthday, and I've just finished a portrait of him from an old photo. "Come in," I call. But it's Mom who enters, her gaze landing on the sketch. "Is that your father?" she snaps. "It's his birthday, Mom. He's still my dad." She grabs the sketchbook from my hands. "This is why you're so unrealistic about your future, always living in a fantasy world." I reach for my sketchbook, but she holds it out of reach. "Mom, please." "Enough," she snaps, her gaze landing on my hair. "Your hair. It's always in your face. How can we even see to draw?" She grabs a pair of scissors from my desk, moving toward me too quickly for me to stop her. Before I know it, she's hacking away at my hair, long strands falling to the floor. "Mom, stop." I cry, but it's too late. She steps back, a twisted smile on her face. "There. Now you can see clearly. Maybe now you'll start seeing reality instead of your silly dreams." I rush to the mirror, horrified at the uneven, choppy mess. Tears spill down my face as I touch the jagged ends. "Oh, stop crying," she scoffs. "You look fine, or at least as fine as an ugly duckling can look." She leaves the room, and I sink to the floor, my heart breaking. I curl up on my bed, sobbing as I run my fingers through what's left of my hair. My phone buzzes. It's Amelia. Hey, what's up? She cut my hair, Amelia. I managed between sobs. She called me an ugly duckling. I'm coming over now, Amelia replies. 20 minutes later, she's climbing through my window. She gasps when she sees me. Oh, Margaret, we need to get you out of here. We spend hours talking, planning. She mentions London again, and suddenly it doesn't seem so impossible. Mr. Thompson, I murmur. He might be able to help. The next day at school, I corner Mr. Thompson after class. His eyes widen when he sees my hair, but he doesn't comment. Mr. Thompson, I need help. I want to go to London, but I don't know how. I might have an idea. Give me a few days. A few days later, he has good news. Margaret, I've arranged for you to attend a summer art program in London. It's a great opportunity to get your foot in the door. I'm stunned. But how will I afford it? It's all taken care of. Consider it an investment in your future. That afternoon, while searching for a sketch pad in my mom's office, I stumble upon a stack of letters addressed to me from various art schools, including acceptance letters. That night, I confront my mom, my hands shaking as I hold the letters. How could you hide these from me? Of those, I was protecting you from disappointment. You're not cut out for art school, Margaret. You don't get to decide that. I shout, years of frustration pouring out. You've been controlling my life, putting me down, making me feel worthless. But guess what? I'm not worthless. I'm talented, and I'm going to prove it. Mom's face turns red with anger. You ungrateful brat, after everything I've done for you. Everything you've done? You mean like cutting my hair, calling me ugly, making me feel like I'm never good enough? I'm your mother. I know what's best for you. No, you don't. But I know what's best for me, and it's not here. I run to my room, locking the door behind me. With shaking hands, I call Amelia. It's time, I say. I'm leaving. That night, I pack quickly, shoving clothes and art supplies into my backpack. Amelia is waiting in her car down the street. As we drive away, I feel a mix of terror and exhilaration. I'm leaving everything I know behind. But for the first time in my life, I feel free. You okay? Amelia asks, glancing over at me. I took a deep breath, watching my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. Yeah, I think I finally am. We drove through the night toward the airport, a new day dawning. I was ready to start my new life. London, here I come, I whispered as I stepped off the plane at Heathrow. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might burst. The bustling airport was overwhelming. A whirlwind of accents and languages swirled around me, making me feel like a tiny fish in a vast, unfamiliar ocean. Clutching my backpack tighter, I whispered to myself, "You've got this, Margaret," summoning courage I wasn't sure I had. I made my way to the student housing where I'd be staying for the summer program. Fumbling with the key, I finally managed to unlock the door, just as it swung open, revealing a girl with vibrant blue hair and an infectious smile. "You must be Margaret. I'm Jade, your roommate. Come on in." Jade's warmth instantly put me at ease. As we unpacked, she shared stories of her life as a fashion design student from Manchester. "London's a bit mad at first," she said, laughing as she helped me hang up clothes. "But you'll love it, I promise." That night, as I lay in my new bed, homesickness hit me like a wave. I found myself thinking of Mom, wondering if she was worried. Then I remembered the incident with my hair, and a familiar knot tightened in my stomach. Determined to move forward, I threw myself into my art classes. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who truly understood my passion. "Margaret, your use of color is extraordinary," my instructor, Miss Patel, remarked one day. "Have you considered applying to art schools here?" I beamed with pride, feeling a confidence I'd never known. But London life wasn't always rosy. The busy streets and unfamiliar customs sometimes left me feeling lost. One day, I burst into tears, overwhelmed, while trying to navigate the tube. "Hey, you okay?" a kind voice asked. I looked up to see Tom, a fellow student in my program. From that day on, Tom became a friend, showing me around London and helping me adjust. To make ends meet, I started working part-time at a quaint cafe near our housing. The owner, Mrs. Thompson, no relation to my teacher back home, took me under her wing. "You're doing great, love," she'd say, smiling as I mastered making the perfect cup of tea. One evening, as I sketched in the park, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. My stomach dropped as I read her words. "Margaret, this rebellious phase has gone on long enough. Come home now, or I'll cut you off completely. No more money, no more support. You'll be on your own." I stared at the screen, anger and fear churning within me. Then, taking a steadying breath, I typed my reply. "I'm already on my own, Mom, and I'm doing just fine." I turned off my phone and went back to my sketch, my hand steady and sure. London was challenging, yes, but it was also freeing. For the first time in my life, I was in control, and despite the struggles, I wouldn't have it any other way. Finally, the day of the student exhibition arrived, and my heart raced. My latest piece, a vibrant abstract painting depicting my journey from Ohio to London, was on display. As I stood nervously by my work, I heard whispers of admiration. "Margaret, darling, this is exceptional," Miss Patel exclaimed, leaning over a distinguished-looking man. "This is Mr. Blackwood from the Royal College of Art. He'd like to speak with you." As we chatted, my heart swelled with excitement and hope. Then I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I froze. It was Dad, standing right in front of me, looking older than I remembered, but with the same kind eyes. "Hello, Margaret," he said, his voice soft. "You've grown into a beautiful young woman." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Dad, why are you here? Why did you leave?" He sighed deeply, regret evident in his gaze. "I'm so sorry, Margaret. I never wanted to leave you. Your mother, she gave me an ultimatum. Leave, or she'd make sure I never saw you again. I thought leaving would protect you, but I see now that was a mistake." Before I could respond, a familiar voice sliced through the crowd. "Margaret Marie Parker." My blood ran cold as I watched my mother storm toward us, her face contorted with rage. "So this is where you've been hiding?" Playing artist in London. Margaret's decision to distance herself from her mother reflects a powerful journey towards self-preservation. Throughout her life, her mother consistently undermined her dreams, imposed rigid control, and even attempted to sabotage her happiness. Her mother's destructive actions, cutting Margaret's hair, hiding her acceptance letters, and emotionally manipulating her, left deep scars. When Margaret finally found her freedom and her voice, maintaining boundaries was essential to protect her newfound sense of self. Yet, forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean resuming a close relationship. It's about releasing anger and hurt to find peace, while still honoring what she endured. Margaret's journey to self-worth meant she could no longer subject herself to her mother's harmful influence, even as she worked on healing. In time, therapy and self-reflection might allow her to forgive, if she chooses, without compromising her boundaries or her hard-won freedom. The line between forgiveness and self-preservation varies for everyone. Some people find healing in reconnecting, while others feel healthier maintaining distance. For Margaret, her art and her support system enabled her to move forward independently, leaving room to choose, when she's ready, if she wants to let her mother back into her life.